Hi, Martin Allen here, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a tournament-worthy deck from scratch. Starter decks are probably the best thing to take a look at if you have never made a deck before. You can get some really good ideas from them. Most of your cards are going to be coming from booster packs or from buying them online. Now, before you can begin building your deck, you need to come up with the overall concept of it. Thinking whether it needs to be aggressive, kind of like a troll hunter, who uses his aggressive abilities to dish out high-level amounts of damage, leaving his opponent in the wake. Or you can go with something like a frost mage, who freezes their opponents and then does massive amounts of AoE damage. Or you can go the more defensive route and do something like a healing priest or a protective warrior. Healing priests make excellent support decks, and even good solo decks if you build them right. And protecting decks are great for keeping the heat off of your hero or your allies. I notice the further you go down on this bar, the more you start to enter group decks, but that's not always true, because if you build them right, you can have an excellent support and an excellent solo deck. It's important to note that if you're building an aggressive deck, and you want it to be as aggressive as possible, make sure all of your abilities and other cards you stick in there are also very aggressive. Or you can go another route with your deck and stick in some less aggressive cards like defensive buffs, heals, and protectors to neutralize some of your weaker points and increase your hero's lifespan. And same thing for less aggressive decks. You can balance out your weak points by putting more aggressive cards in there. Choosing your faction is probably the most overlooked thing when it comes to deck building. There are a lot of perks that are exclusively offered to each faction that can really help your deck, things like weapons, quests, and abilities. Choosing your faction can either strengthen or weaken your deck, depending on what kind of build you're going for. I have also noticed that each faction's allies play slightly different. The Horde's allies are more aggressive attackers, and their abilities are geared more towards an offensive nature, and the Alliance allies are slightly more geared towards the defensive side. This doesn't mean you can't have an offensive deck with the Alliance or a defensive deck with the Horde. It's just what I find, and it's a very slight difference. Choosing your hero is more important than you think. There have been many times where I would have lost if not for my hero's ability, so choosing a hero that can help your deck can be a winning factor. Make sure your hero's ability complements your deck. Let's say you were going for a priest that was going to do shadow damage. It would make more sense to put a priest in like Omidus than it would a holy priest like Boris. Get out of here, you silly little dwarf. Each race has their own special ability. Choosing a hero who has a good racial ability for your deck could make all the difference in the world. Now for the most important part of your deck, abilities. If you have bad abilities or abilities that don't belong, it could bring a great deck down to the worst deck ever. Stay away from abilities where the cost is more than the damage being dealt. Those abilities are awful and will ruin your draw rate. Abilities like Arctic Blast are okay, even though the cost is 4 and the damage is 2. Because damage is shared with multiple targets, makes it a great card to put in your deck. Make sure that the abilities match the overall concept of your deck. Having an ability like Rend in there when you're going for a more protection style really doesn't make much sense. Or if you want to make a rogue who's doing poison damage, it would make little sense to put in a card that is dealing damage to exhausted allies. I'm not saying you can't have cards with other talents, but it needs to flow with the overall goal of your deck. I see too many decks that don't know what they want to accomplish, and decks like that always falter. No matter what kind of deck you have, whether it's offensive or defensive, you really should have at least a couple cards that stop other abilities. Now when it comes to choosing the right kind of equipment, it is a little bit difficult for me to tell you what kinds to put in there, since each deck is going to be different with the amount of equipment and what kind of equipment they need. The best thing I can tell you is if you're a DPS, focus only on the ability. You do not need to worry about armor. And if you're looking for survivability, look for the armor over the ability. Allies are a very important part of your deck. Whether you use them a lot or a little, they can make a big difference. Stay away from allies that don't offer you any ability at all. There are way better allies in this game, and it will benefit you way more by choosing allies with an ability. Allies' abilities can really help increase the lifespan of your hero. Having abilities like Protector, or abilities that debuff your opponent's attack, or increasing your attack damage, making it so you pay less to play abilities, making it so you pay less to strike with weapons, or by debuffing your entire opponent's field. Those are some excellent ways to stay alive. And even if you're only using your allies to attack your opponent, having abilities like Untargetable, Stealth, Long Range, and Smash are more than needed abilities when it comes to making an ally-based deck. Quests are extremely important in a deck. Good quests make for good saucy decks. There are also some really bad quests, like Falling to Corruption. They want you to destroy 2 resources for 2 cards. What's up with that? It's horrible. It should never even have existed. It's so bad. Quests like this should take a fireball to the face. They're so bad. It deserves to die. Don't ever put these in their deck. Each faction, as well as each race, has quest cards that are exclusively for them. Take a look at your faction's quests and your race's quests, and see if they'll give your deck a 1-up. There are many quests that give you tokens. These are good if you're interested in starting an ally-based deck, or they can help you give an edge over your opponent if you're interested in building a more aggressive type of deck. There are quests that can change an ally's type of attack damage, or that give you resistances, or that make it so you pay less to complete quests. You might want to consider putting about 1 or 2 of these in your deck. They can help you out a lot when needed. The most important kind of quests you want to have in your deck are card draw quests. If you don't have good card draw, you can really screw yourself over. I recommend that you have about 70% card draw quests and 30% other kinds of quests. This way you get large amounts of card draw while still having some other quests in the mix to keep things fresh. As far as locations go, it's good to have a few in there, but don't have too many because you can only have 1 active location at a time. But locations are great. You can have a major impact on the game by having a really good location in there. This is the most important step. If you were to walk away with a piece of information that would change your life, this would be it. Every tournament player knows that you can have the best deck build with all the right cards in it and lose every time because your draw rate percentage amounts to that of Murloc poop. Here is a sample of how you can look at the percentage for drawing each type of card. These percentages were made up just to give you a visual. There is no universal percentage for a good deck. Each deck has to have a different percentage, like my Warax deck. His percentage for drawing weapons is very high, whereas my Frost Mage deck's percentage for drawing weapons is very low. Take a good look at your deck's percentage. If something looks too high or too low, just adjust it. It will be the best decision of your life. Here is what I believe to be an ideal hand to have at the start of your turn. 2 quests, 2 allies, 2 abilities, and some sort of equipment card. Here are some last pieces of advice to help you guys from making a deck. Have an answer to everything. If your hero is weak when being attacked by abilities, then find some interruptibility cards. If your hero can attack through armor, then get some destroy equipment cards. Filter through your deck, removing any cards that don't belong or that are clogging up your draw rate. And the most important step, play it over and over. Make sure you ask other players how you can improve your deck, adding or subtracting cards along the way. Thank you guys so much for watching this tutorial. If you have any other tutorials that you'd like me to do, just let me know. As always, rate and subscribe. Thank you very much.